Welcome to Quarter Life Confessions. This is episode 3. My name is Ansh.
And my name is Mahika Rathod.
Mahika, I have a confession to make, and I can't believe I'm going to say this on the internet, but they say vulnerability is strength, so here goes. When I moved to New York City at the age of 18 for my undergrad, I felt so lonely and overwhelmed on the first day. I remember just looking at the big buildings around me and feeling so lost because, first of all, it was hard for me to find where my dorm was. It was hard for me to order food because we were given like DoorDash credit and I had to figure out how I can get data, and my data wasn't working, and all of these issues. I ended up calling my mentor, my college leader actually, and he helped me sort that out. Eventually, my food came. After I ate my food, I felt like I just wanted to return back home, just see some familiar faces because I was also quarantining, so I didn't have a roommate. I ended up calling my dad and I just broke down in front of my dad on call. And it was, I think, like 3 or 4 a.m. for him. And he was super nice and he consoled me and he told me everything is going to be okay and to be strong. And we both agreed to not tell my mom because she would have worried more than she already was.
Yeah.
And I don't think she still knows. And I know my mom is listening to this. So, mom, sorry to break it to you this way, but that happened. And I don't think people really talk about how hard it can be to leave everything behind in pursuit of a better life for education to improve yourself. But I'm really proud that I was able to soldier on and power through and combat those doubts and eventually build a life for myself in New York City.
Yeah, I agree. I think more often than not, we see all the people who are have always been super excited about their life abroad, about saying, "Yeah, this is the best thing I did for myself," and they just talk about all the good things that happened. It's very rare that we get to find out about all the hardships that they faced in order to get there, because I am certain even if they don't tell us their hardships, there must have been many. Because And on the contrary, when I came to the US, I was already so fed up of being in India because I spent my entire first year online from India. And so having that time difference, taking classes, missing out on the college experience, which there wasn't much of it because you guys were quarantining, but
Yeah.
just knowing that I'd gotten into this wonderful university, that I had gotten the chance to move to New York and I was still stuck at home, I think that contributed to me being even more excited to come in. And I think for that reason, I was able to run away from being homesick, at least for the first multiple weeks and months. And the other thing is, I had my aunt who lives in the Bronx, and so she came and picked me up. She was very nice to come and pick me up, and she was able to drop me to my dorm. So that made that a little bit frictionless, and I was able to immediately come in and I was ready. I think one thing that stands out to me is I had to fill out a form on the first day that I landed, and it was, I think, like 6 in the morning. I had a meeting the day I landed for my on-campus job, and so I had to
Where we
immediately
met.
check my dorm. Huh?
Where we met
Where we met, exact. Well, we met the next year actually.
eventually.
Eventually, eventually. Yeah, so I had to come in and immediately move in. So I had to fill out this form, and immediately I wrote the date in American format rather than Indian format. So that really stuck out to me, and I know my aunt made a comment about it. She's like, "Oh, like you didn't even struggle to, adapt to this." I was like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm ready." So I think those are two different kinds of experiences of what you could feel when you move to a new country. And at the same time, I think, especially maybe like the first few months, maybe the first 6 months, arbitrary number, were especially hard because I think New York City in itself is such a hard city to live in. The tiny rooms, the so many people around you, and yet feeling so lonely. I think
Yeah.
all of those aspects really build you and shape you and mold you into the person that you could become. And I think it's so interesting that not a lot of people can make it in New York City. I can
For
say
sure.
that with confirmation, because of the fact that New York City is the kind of place that pushes you and shoves you into the street, and you have to kind of obstacle course your way through all of the cars and
Yeah.
honking and ambulance sirens and everything, and you have to make your way back up, and you have to stand tall and stand firm in the face of adversity. And I think that is something that moving to NYC really taught me. as
Yeah.
someone who'd always been independent, it added so much joy to the independence that I had. And at the same time, coming from a culture where I didn't have to clean my own dishes or do my own laundry, I had to come here and do that, which is fine because I don't think I had any sort of issue with, molding myself to be able to do all of those chores. It just
Mm.
felt very natural.
Yeah. Oh my God, I have so many thoughts. First of all,
Yes.
I want to begin with saying it's so interesting how the first 30 to 60 days, the number of positive or negative experiences an international student has really determines the kind of journey that they might have in the future as well. And I think there's some sort of statistic as well that they told us
That
in our
is the
college
first
period.
40 days.
Yeah, because
Yes.
with me, what happened was immediately as I landed, I had a negative experience because I was trying to book an Uber, and that Uber I had to cancel it, and then I was sort of lured in by this guy at JFK who into his cab, and I paid him cash. And I know you're not supposed to do that, right? You're supposed to take Uber.
Yeah.
I didn't know any better, and I didn't have data, so I couldn't contact my parents, and I was so stressed out. And then I was not able to order food. And then even a few days after I was finished quarantining, I met up with a friend I met online during my first semester, and that just did not go well. And I was like, this one friend I just had such a negative experience with.
Yeah.
But what eventually turned into a very positive experience within the first 2 weeks was because of my roommate, who I also met
Mm.
online, and I was able to make friends with him and through him.
Yeah.
And I had a really great first semester with a lot of memories, and I made like one of the friends that I made, I still am friends with, and
Yeah.
I think that says something too. And what's interesting for you is that because you were able to get like a familiar face pick you up and drop you to your dorm, I think it also made the whole experience a lot easier. Uh,
Yeah, frictionless, definitely. Yeah.
yeah, frictionless. So that's interesting. And the second thing that I want to say is how, like in New York, like you're living alone, you have to figure things out on your own. You have to grow. You're forced to grow, especially if you get your own apartment, which is what
Yeah.
we ended up doing.
Yeah.
So I stayed in a dorm for one semester, and then I ended up getting an apartment for my sophomore year and then my junior senior year. And you stayed in a dorm for your sophomore year, and then you ended up getting an apartment in your junior year,
No,
right?
no. It's no, I I was in a dorm in my sophomore year and my junior year.
Oh shit.
And then I got an apartment in my senior year. Either way, point is that you are doing a lot of things on your own because even if you're staying in a dorm, like the dorms that I had were apartment style dorms, so I was cooking and I was cleaning
Yeah,
on my own. Like all it's all the same. So I don't, yeah.
yeah, shit. Sorry to forget your history.
It's okay, it's okay, it's
Um,
okay.
but
No,
because
I
I
mean,
was,
it's hard to keep track too because like I moved 6 times in 5 years. So I do not fault you for that. It's okay. I've just been moving so much.
and
It's
we
hard for
didn't
me to
talk
keep
about that.
track. Yeah.
Yeah, valid. So because I moved into an apartment my sophomore year, I had to figure out like my own bedding, how to meal prep, how to travel from to and from campus, how to clean, how to do my laundry, everything, and that forced me to grow up so much quicker than the average 19-year-old, I would say, or the average 20-year-old. And I am so happy that happened for me.
Right.
But also, there's something to be said about the fact that you have to make the choice to grow up. You have to make the choice to go out there and have a clean apartment. Like, do the dishes, to cook your own food, to go to the gym, to still get good grades, to participate in on campus jobs, to have a social life outside of just your classes. And a lot of people don't make that choice. They
Right.
don't choose to grow up because I have seen a lot of young men their apartments, and might I say it's just a hellhole. It was just so shabby. There was no concern for hygiene whatsoever. In fact, that's what happened to me when I moved apartments after my junior year. I moved into an apartment of two of my friends. He had an opening, and I just walked in and I was like, dude, I have to completely change everything about this. And I remember like I'm shirtless, I'm sweating, and I was scrubbing the floor, and I'm scrubbing like some of the kitchen cabinets. And I will never forget that. It's like such a quintessential experience. And I know you were there with me for that, and you helped me
I
so
was
much
just
too.
gonna say, like, I can vouch for this, and I have a video of you scrubbing the floor shirtless in shorts with nitrile gloves. So, sterilized gloves, might I add.
Yeah.
Gloves, shirtless, shorts, scrubbing the floor. And honestly, this house was borderline radioactive. I
Yeah.
genuinely had to mask.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was, and we turned that into a home,
we
and that
did.
was really nice.
It was.
Uh, but yeah, like why some people don't make that choice to grow because it's hard.
Yeah.
But doing those hard things that we did in our early 20s, I mean, we're still 23, 24. But doing that, I think, helped us mature and helped us come into our own. And I'm very, very grateful for those experiences.
I agree. I think there is also something to be said about the fact that neither of us were equipped nor experienced in any of this stuff beforehand,
Yeah,
and that speaks to our privilege. And I'm being as factual as I can. I didn't grow up cleaning. I mean, of course, I cleaned after myself, but I'm not the one who was sweeping the floors, and I wasn't the one who was dusting everything. And it's such an interesting thing that there were other peers of ours who also came from similar backgrounds, yet they had such a hard time adapting to those chores.
yeah,
And I think that's what you're talking about when you say they made the choice not to grow up.
yeah,
But I think I wonder why it is that it was much easier. I think it was pretty easy for me to come into this role of cleaning up after myself and making sure my place was hygienic and also invitable for other people and welcoming. And the fact that I wasn't taking away space from my roommates, specifically because I lived in the dorms for 2 years, and
hmm,
making sure that I wasn't littering the place because I've had nightmare roommates to the
yeah,
point where the bathroom is so unclean that I and started not using the bathroom in my dorm. I would like go to a friend's place or something like that. Like
yeah,
there are horrible horror stories, honestly, of living with people, especially when you're sharing a room and you have two beds in the same room. Like I
yeah.
remember one of my roommates, she had a cap that genuinely smelled like pee.
Oh
And I
my
was like,
God.
like something genuinely stinks in my room. And I was like, what is this? And it was so disgusting. And though even the confrontation that you need to have, I'm such a non-confrontational person, and living with people has changed me forever
Yeah,
because I was able to advocate for myself and say, hey, so let's not keep this horrible pee stain like stinking cap in this room because I also live here. And then I think there's so much you learn about people when you live with them is you see all of their unhindered habits.
yeah,
Like the amount of exposure I got to how long people can be on their phones, specifically my junior year, insane.
yeah,
And I think that you uncover so many things about people's habits and their eating habits and who they hang out with, who they talk to, why they are a certain way, how much they isolate, how much they avoid. And it really gets you to thinking about yourself because sometimes I would just sit there and be like, you know what, I'm fine.
yes, dude. When you see
Because
somebody spend $300 to get their room cleaned, you're like,
yes,
wait,
oh my God.
I'm actually
Oh my
doing
God.
just fine. I'm
Do you
fine.
remember when my roommate did that?
Yes, that's
She
what I brought it
went
up.
away. While she was away, she got cleaners to clean her room and her part of the living room. And I was like, I didn't even think of that as an option ever because I'm like, hey, this is my space. I'm going to clean up after myself. I'm going to make sure everyone else, like, I want to be as unmemorable as I can as a roommate.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like memorable for all the right reasons, but unmemorable in terms of, yeah, she was clean. Like you couldn't tell that she was in the kitchen. Like I would
yeah,
clean up after myself. But I'm so hypercritical of my own habits and you know how much time I'm spending on my phone or if I'm going to the gym or what kind of food I'm eating or who I'm hanging out with, how much I'm studying, like how productive I am in a day, that I would often get so wrapped up in that and then I would see my surroundings and I'm like, what is going on with you guys?
yeah, dude. I think what that taught me was that I faced the same thing, right, with with
Yeah,
the roommates that I had. For
yeah,
example, my first roommate, I would go to the gym pretty consistently in my sophomore year and junior year when I stayed with him for the
yeah.
2 years. And once I did drag him to do a leg day with me, but he was not consistent at all. He was like one of the laziest people I've met. And what I admire about you was that you didn't let the laziness of your roommates affect you. I think
Yeah.
I did to a certain extent where I would
Mm.
also just, chill with him and play video games for hours. And I think I had certain bad habits and mindsets that I picked up from my roommates. And then eventually I stayed with somebody who I let influence me in a positive way because I was able to take something that he was doing that was working for him, and I was like, I'm inspired by that and I want to do that as well. But what this whole living alone, living with roommates taught me was like, dude, just cannot change people.
Yeah.
And the more expectations you have from these people, the more disappointed you're going to be. You
Yeah.
think this guy's going to go to the gym because you're getting jacked, you're getting abs, you're eating protein. He's not, man. He's not. No matter if he's gone from fat to fit and now he's going back to fat, unless it comes from within, unless that internal drive comes in, it's
Yeah.
just not going to happen. And that would frustrate me, right? Because even my the roommate that I moved in with in my senior year, like I love that guy. Okay, he's my boy. But I was like, dude, why don't you just come to the gym with me? Right? And I'm still
Yeah.
telling him that. I'm like, why don't you just go and work out? It's so good for you.
Yeah.
You know, and you know you want muscle. But I just made me realize that, dude, you just can't change people. You
Right.
can tell them, like, hey, man, uh, clean your coffee mug, and they'll eventually do it. But major life decisions, they have to do it themselves.
Yeah, I think even with the clean your coffee mug, sometimes it just gets thrown out. Like I know the amount of times when I would repeatedly tell my roommates, "Hey, can you please clean this? Hey again, please clean this." And then I'm like, "Okay, this box is growing ecosystems inside of it, and I can't let this be in my environment. It's getting picked up and it's getting thrown because I've told you 10 times and you didn't do it." And I think that's another aspect of living with roommates is you were friends with your roommates.
Yeah.
I ended up being friends with them, but we didn't start off as friends. You guys started off as friends often. And so I think that is also a huge difference in expectations from people, is because you already knew and loved them. Versus for me, I had a little bit of a disconnect, and I think that is the best way to keep it, especially when you are sharing a space, because there are so many things that you won't see eye to eye on, and sometimes, honestly, like I
You really
don't
think
think
that's the best way to keep it? Because as far as I remember, we were roommates. And so are you trying to tell me that, you wanted to be more disconnected from me?
Stop.
I
No, okay, clocked me there.
knew.
I mean, I mean more in the sense of the kind of people. You know what? I'm going to swallow my words. I think it depends
Yeah.
on the kind of person. I think it
Yeah.
depends on the kind of person, specifically because I don't think we ever had expectations from each other, but because we're such independent individuals who have a certain standard for our lives, we
Yeah.
had that kind of trust that we knew that okay, if she's doing this, she'll pick up after herself. Like I didn't ever have to think about the fact that oh yeah, he's not going to clean up after himself.
Yeah.
This man used to be up on Sunday morning vacuuming. I'm sleeping because I'm waking up every morning to go to this job that I didn't like, and Sunday morning this man is vacuuming.
I used to stress clean, dude.
And the craziest thing is his room was here, then there's another room, and then it's my room. So it's like a very like it's a long hallway, but he would always come up in front of my room and vacuum, and I'm like, "Are
Okay,
you
I wouldn't
kidding
vacuum.
me?"
I would not vacuum. The max I would do is like brush the floor because it
That's
was like
wrong.
dirty
That's
in front of the
incorrect.
washroom.
No, you would.
Vacuum, I
Yeah,
was
you
pretty
would brush.
considerate of the fact that you were sleeping, as far as I remember, because I loved you and I love you, and I would want you to get your sleep and your rest so you can have your beauty sleep. But I would
You
stress
would
clean a lot.
say it again.
Huh? What
What
did
did
you
you
say?
say last?
I said I would stress clean a lot. This is what happens when you're doing a long distance relationship and you decide to start a podcast and
Yeah.
it's virtual. But hey,
You just speak at the same time, you say the exact same thing, and then you ask each other what the
yeah,
other person said when you can simply mind read. I
yeah,
agree. Yes, of course, you would be very mindful and all of that. But at the same time, I think you were doing me a huge service by vacuuming because I never had to vacuum in front of my door ever. I'd vacuum inside my room, the rest of the house this man would take care of. That was lavish,
sometimes I would
especially after the
vacuum
experiences
your
I'd
room as
had.
well.
Hmm?
Sometimes I would vacuum your room as well, dude.
Yeah, I
No,
know.
not gonna do it. Let me just do it
Honestly,
once.
that was such princess treatment. This one time, oh my God, and we've completely gone off on a tangent. But and this was before we were roommates, I was living in a separate place, and I had a really important deadline that night, but my room was a mess. and I just had a lot of clothes out, and everything was stressing me out, and I had a really important deadline, and we were meant to have dinner together, and he came inside. I was like, "You can't go into my room. I'm so sorry." And I really have this deadline. And so I was sitting on the island of the kitchen, and I was just doing this. He's like, "You know what? I'll clean your room." And this man cleaned my entire room. And it's not like my room was dirty. He folded every single piece of clothing that I had, put it up on hangers, made sure it was in its place, and then he was just sitting on the bed and chilling, watching YouTube videos while I was outside doing my work for my deadline. So I think then that reaffirmed that, yeah, we would be great roommates,
Yeah.
and also like I would be in a very win-win position. But I think we were always good about like helping each other rather than, you know,
Getting
creating
each other's
situations
way.
that stress out and drain the other person.
Yeah.
So I think we would always, like, I would sometimes cook for the both of us. You would vacuum my room. So I think we had a very good balance.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've like gone on a complete
So let's talk
tangent.
about something more serious. Let's talk about the
Yes.
personal growth that comes along with living alone and the
Yeah, let's
silence
do
that
that.
accompany.
Yes.
Like, I really actually do want to talk about this. Is like
Yeah.
I was forced to face myself because of the fact that I would spend so much time just silent. And this was apart from the fact that I was living with a roommate and like I was living away from family. You know, like when you go to university, at least this was my experience, 80% of the day I was not talking to anyone. Like I was listening to my professor, sure, and then I was doing my homework, and then maybe like 10-20% I would talk to you, or I would talk to a couple of friends, but I would go back home, I would eat dinner, I would do my thing, I would go to sleep. And that forced me to face my quote unquote demons, right? I had to understand what my life had been so far and where I was taking it or where I wanted it to go. And it was uncomfortable, but it made me who I am. It made me understand what my opinions are, what my worldviews are, what worldviews are almost pushed on me by society. And I'm so grateful for that. And I think every young person should try to experience that, even if they don't live alone, if they live with family, just sit in silence, man. I think we've forgotten the art of sitting in silence, of just being with ourselves because we're so afraid of our thoughts. And living alone made me realize that, dude, even if you're afraid of your thoughts, you need to face them because your future depends on it.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And I think it's really important to add to the fact that we met halfway through college. So you still had 2 years where we
Yeah.
didn't know each other. We didn't know the other person existed.
Crazy to
So I
think
think,
about.
I know, right? I've known you forever. Um, I think I could not agree more. Specifically, even as someone who didn't spend the first year on campus, I remember how many late nights, obviously, because of the time difference and everything, but how silent the house would get, and I'm just the only one awake and studying. And I agree with you. I think when you live alone or when you're doing something in a different time zone than other people, you sometimes forget the last time you talked.
Yeah.
And especially when I would live alone, like when I didn't have a roommate or when my roommate was away or whatever, sometimes I would have to just say a word or clear my throat. I'm like, oh, I haven't spoken in hours.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and especially as someone who didn't go back for a lot of my summer breaks and winter breaks, I would have days where I haven't spoken.
Oh my God, yeah.
And I think that is such
Nobody
an
talks about
experience.
that.
No one talks about that. And
Yeah.
it's like the walls start talking to you. And this is something that my dad and I spoke about because my dad lived alone in Dubai for a few years because of work. And also he'd lived in New York City in his 20s. And that is something that he taught me and spoke to me about before I ever went to New York City, is that when you live alone, the walls start talking to you. And you have to face yourself to a depth that you haven't ever before.
Yeah.
And as someone who's always been very self aware, as an athlete, as a leader, as all of these things, it was a very different kind of experience to have to face myself when everything is silent, when I'm not needed somewhere, when my productivity isn't the highest or whatever. Like, you're sitting alone in bed at night before going to sleep, and all of these thoughts just come rushing into your head. What am I doing right now? What have I been doing for the past 5 years? What am I going to be doing in 5 years? Why am I not in the gym every single day? Why don't I have abs? Like, what kind of food am I eating? Every single thought that you've ever had will come at you at the same time.
Yeah. And it's so important that
And
you learn to control that for yourself.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is also like how much you listen to the negative thoughts versus how much you redirect into positive, constructive criticism for your life. And
Mm.
that's what learning from it is about. And breaking old habits and thinking about how much you depend on some people, how codependent you've maybe gotten over the years from some
Mm.
friendships, how in and as someone who's hyper independent, I have learned to rely more on people. But I know that there are people who end up becoming codependent and they need to learn how to become more independent. So it's a very
Yeah, I have to
interesting
talk about
mix.
that.
Yes,
Because,
yeah,
okay, so I had a roommate.
yeah.
I don't think he's gonna listen to this. Whatever. My first room, my second roommate, right? He had a special other. He had a girlfriend, and they were
Special
so.
other.
Yeah, I don't know why I said that. They were
What do you mean
so
that?
codependent. It was unreal, dude. And because I think they made each other worse, and it was really sad to see. And I think because of that, and that's something I want to talk about as well. Like the roommates that you have are so critical for your growth, man, or lack thereof. Because I realized a year and a half in that I cannot stay with this guy and that the girl who was basically our third roommate because I felt suffocated. And I
Yeah.
felt like because they're not growing, they're also limiting my growth. And I knew I needed to get out of there. And that is something, if you're a young person and you feel like the person you're living with is not it, you can make the change to go and live with somebody who will benefit you in the future.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy I made that decision, dude. And like living with my new roommate also had its pros and cons, but overall, like it was such a good time. Like we had our own space, and eventually you became our roommate. We got our own PS5. We would chat into the late hours of the night about entrepreneurship, about our future, about building things, about our ideas. And that was so much more productive for me. That was so much more freeing for me than the situation that I was in before. Uh, so yeah, man, roommates play a huge part in your international student experience.
Yeah. I think there's also something to be said about the fact that sometimes you can be in your hometown and your home country and at home and feel suffocated a little bit as well
Yeah,
because you know you want to do more and you want to get out there and have these experiences and learn from your life. So, for anyone who's chasing that, that's also fine
yeah,
because you can love your parents and you can love your siblings and still want more and still want to experience life as an individual, and that's fine too. And if on top of that you have roommates that you don't feel as comfortable with, that is so character building. Trust that it's it is only what you take away from it and how much you learn from your experiences living with people who you think are different than you and who you think are not growing at the same pace than you. And it is not your responsibility to parent your peers essentially.
yeah,
And I think that is a very important learning that I had very early on because I was like, you know what, it's not my business, it's
yeah,
fine. I'm living my life and I am having a great time doing all of these other things. The support systems that I need are in place and it's fine.
yeah,
And so I think it also depends. That's why I'm saying like it also depends on how emotionally invested you are with your roommates.
yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
just think it speaks to the fact that the rate at which somebody chooses to be independent, and this ties back to my first point as well, the
Yeah.
rate at which somebody chooses to change and to grow is different. I personally love the independence of just being out there on my own, trying to get a job, earning my own, earning some money or through on-campus jobs, working multiple on-campus jobs, joining a fraternity. That independence, man, that was so cool. That was so amazing. Going out at 2 a.m. for chicken and rice, or just like going out for a walk. It's something you just don't get in any other country, or not in any other city, I would say.
Mhm.
And I think New York makes you like even more independent than other cities. I could be wrong, but that's
I
just
agree.
my. Uh, you think so, right?
Like we're so biased, but I agree with this.
Yeah, exactly.
Because and to be so fair, this is the only city I know as an adult. If I really think about it. Of course I know like Gurgaon and Delhi and I know
But let me
other
ask you
places
this:
I've
which
lived in
other
too.
city will you carry? the Almira or the table that you did from 60th Street to 9th, 5th Street.
Fifth Street, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Where else are
that's
you
the
doing
other
that?
thing. That's what I was gonna say is I think there is so much to be said about the fact that our campus was the city.
Yeah.
We weren't like in a gated campus, or we didn't have all of these like frat houses or clubs specifically in a certain location. You're traversing through the city to get to your classes.
Yeah.
Like you have a homeless shelter right next to a dorm room. Me, for sophomore year, we had a homeless shelter right next to the dorm that I was in. And
Mm.
you have such interesting experiences too because you're so immersed in the city. And
Mhm.
yeah, I agree. Like I carried a study table from like 70th some street near Hunter College all the way to like Lower East Side, and it was what a crazy experience because I had to drag that thing into the subway and then drag it all the way back home. It's you're not doing this in any other city. Other cities you're
Yeah.
dependent on cars, you're dependent on moving trucks and stuff like that, and New York just builds you up to a different level. And I want to go back to talking about the independence. Oh my God, they put crack in that independence. Like I loved, dude. Like sometimes you would just walk in the streets of New York with the wind blowing in your face a little bit. You have both your earphones plugged in. You have a fantastic song going on, and life is worth living.
Yeah.
It's just what an experience. And then like obviously we everyone is guilty of making New York City out to be this concrete jungle and all of your dreams come true here. And at the same time it genuinely tortures you.
Yeah.
So there's such a duality to this city, and every single day is different. Every single street you walk on is different. Every single minute, every single New York minute is different, and it's so
Mhm.
quick, and everyone's busy, and no one cares. And there are still nice people. You can dress up however you want. You can express yourself with however you want, honestly. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And
Yeah.
then at the same time being able to earn money. I had an on-campus job my second, third, and fourth year. And
Mhm.
my fourth year of college, I was also working a part-time job, and I had an on-campus job. And so I was a kid who was on scholarship at NYU, and my parents were helping pay for rent and whatever the remaining amount was. I had like I think 75-80% scholarship. So my parents would directly pay that, but I wouldn't get like a budget per week or per month of this much is how much you can spend from my parents. But I was earning through my on-campus job, so I would have to like ration my money accordingly. Okay, a few updates for you guys. My grandmom was calling me and I forgot to put my laptop on D&D, so that's on me. And then Ansh's laptop ran out of charge, so he had to disconnect his camera and now he's on a new angle for those of you who are watching on YouTube. Anyway, I was talking about the fact that, yeah, my first 2 years when I was in New York, I was rationing my on campus job salary in order to buy anything outside of the basic needs that I needed. And it was such a huge difference in quality of life when I had my part time job in my senior year because of course I had like significantly more money at that time, and the way my quality of life elevated was so fulfilling. I was like, oh yeah, I can go ahead and buy this item of food that I really wanted that I wouldn't have been able to get previously. So I think it genuinely teaches you so much delayed gratification as well when you're trying to make it on your own as well, and
Mhm.
trying to make sure that you're staying as independent as you can. And as someone who's very frugal, I would like sometimes in my sophomore year and junior year I'd be like, this piece of lettuce looks really good, do I deserve it though? So I had like immense scarcity mindset, and to move from that into a more abundance mindset and to say, hey, no, it's fine, sometimes if you really want something you should go and get it instead of having a scarcity mindset. So I think that's something that I learned as well.
Yeah, I think that shows a lot of growth on your in your life because it's very hard to get rid of that scarcity mindset. I think we should make a whole episode on that. But it
Yeah.
was the same for me as well, trying to make more money, trying to save money, and then I started investing as well. So it was
Yeah,
really
let's
satisfying
talk about
seeing,
investing too. Yeah.
really satisfying seeing my money grow, and also just feeling a bit more free when it comes to going out with my friends and going on slightly nicer dinners and not worrying and feeling guilty about the fact that, oh, I'm using my parents' money. I'm actually using the money that I earned. That, again, forces you to grow. That not even forces you to grow. That's a really nice growth that I wanted to have for myself,
Yeah,
because financial independence is something that I'm working towards, something that I love, and to experience that at the age of 19, 20 was definitely a privilege, but also something that was worth working hard for. And
definitely.
yeah, grateful that I got the opportunity to do that. But also,
Yeah,
like, I think it taught us so much about how to save money and how to live below our means, and that's something we take forward with us everywhere we go. Because there were also people around us who were spending frivolously, who were spending as
yeah,
if the money is never going to stop flowing, and maybe for them it wouldn't, right?
yeah.
Because who are you, man?
You have
Like,
some wealth there.
dude, there was
Yeah,
so many wealthy kids, dude. It was
yeah,
just really crazy to see. But then again, I think it also taught us ki, like, oh, dude, there's so much money out there. We don't have to have this scarcity mindset. We can be more
absolutely.
abundant. And if
Yeah, I
you,
think it pushed us to be more balanced.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
definitely. But also, I think this is something that I struggled with maybe in my second or third year of college was not exactly comparison, but feeling like I was missing out on certain experiences that would only come about if I had a certain amount of money that I could expend on it. And I think for me, that was specifically maybe like concerts or some things like that that cost more money that I would never ask my parents for money for a concert. And I didn't have enough money to spend freely for a concert. And so I think that those things also change as you are able to make more money for yourself. And I think that is something that I used to feel bad about before. I'm like, hey, all of these kids are able to do all of these things, but I can't. And it's not like, not for a second, and if my parents listen to this, they'll feel bad because it's not on them. Like, I would just never ask. So that's on me. They would never say no, and it's, they obviously they can afford that and they would love for me to have these experiences, but it's just very different, like the mindsets that people come into it with, and some people are more free to be able to ask for money for experiences like that.
Yeah, dude, I see where you're coming from, because I remember my dad telling me that you don't have to be so stringent with yourself when it comes to spending money on experiences. He's like, I'm more than happy for you to go and have experiences, meet people, connect with people, network, because like that's what you're also there to do, not just study. And I think that freed me up a little bit, not just with the money that my parents were sending me, but the money that I was earning as well. And honestly, like the money that I spent on experiences, it was so worth it. It was so worth it. And I'm happy that I did that instead of saving that $80 or $100 to go and put it in my, I don't know, Nvidia stock or something. Because those experiences and memories I will always carry with me, whether it be like a trip to Puerto Rico or a trip to middle of nowhere in Virginia for my spring break. So worth it. Like the growth that I had from those experiences, I definitely would not have been able to replicate if I just saved it and let it invest at grow at 10-15% a year.
I totally agree with that. And specifically when you talk about, like, say for instance, experiences like the trip to Puerto Rico, I remember like that was a trip that I used whatever I'd saved up until that moment. So I think it's also about using that money so wisely where you're like, yeah, I don't need to go for this one party at this lavish club where the cover charges blah amount of dollars, or I don't need, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't need to go clubbing, and I can save this money so that I can actually go for a trip with some of my best friends. And
Yeah.
I think that's also something that you learn by saving that money or by using that money. I think it only comes from the experience of living
Yeah.
those days. So, so yeah, I
And what
totally understand that. I also wanted to touch upon the community aspect of moving abroad and finding your people abroad. I think something that really helped me was already being part of a community as soon as I stepped in. And that for me was like the college cohort program, through which I had an on campus job, and also the student council. So I think it made me feel a little bit less alone because I had something to do, a task that I was needed at, that I had to be at. So putting yourself in positions where you don't have to make the decision in the moment, but it's something that you've set up for yourself before. I think that's really important, especially when you're moving abroad. So whether that's any sort of clubs or whatever that you join, it gives you some sort of purpose as soon as you land. And I think that's another thing that made my first day frictionless, is that I came in, I was picked up by my aunt, I went to my dorm, I immediately logged on to my meeting for my college cohort program, what is it called, orientation. And so it was just like this to this to this. So I didn't have time to think about the fact that I was alone in a new city. And I think that's another thing, is that as people who want to constantly be doing things, we tend to fill our calendars with one task after the other and one commitment after the other. But there is so much to be learned from just sitting alone and doing things alone as well. And this is coming from talking about all of these experiences that you can have with groups of people. But there is no greater learning than the learning that you can have when you're alone, when you're sitting with your thoughts and when you're reflecting. And as someone who has gone to multiple movies alone, sat at multiple restaurants alone, I know that people can find that daunting, but it is so fun. Like, I love doing things alone. I love just getting up and going on a walk, and just getting up and going to Central Park or something like that, because you just spend so much time alone. It's nice to form that friendship and have solo dates with yourself as well.
Hell yeah, dude. There is so much fun to be had in solitary experiences.
Yes.
Like, for example, I'm so happy that 19, 20-year-old, or I don't even know how old I was, went alone for this Rush event for the fraternity that I ended up joining. I wasn't like, guys, so one of my friends, like, can you go together, this, that. I just went and ended up joining that fraternity alone. And the friends that I had at that time were like, what is this guy doing? You're
Yeah.
going to join a frat, you're going to be a frat boy at NYU. And I was like, yeah, why not? Let's try something new. Like, I'm here to push myself, I'm here to do uncomfortable shit. And I've always believed in the fact that if you do uncomfortable things, you will grow exponentially.
Absolutely. When you do uncomfortable things, you expand your comfort zone.
I think that's a beautiful way to end episode 3. If you found this useful, if you still listen to this, we would love it if you could comment who you are, if you're moving abroad to the US or somewhere else, and what you found useful from this podcast.
Absolutely. And we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you for watching. Peace.